What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to this episode of Over the Top Rope. I have got my man Zamir Zuriel. How are you doing this evening?
Hi, bonjour. I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm good, man. Like I said, I just got through eating some dinner, so I'm good now.
Nice.
We'll go ahead and dive in, man, and let's talk about where it all started from you, like your earliest wrestling memories, what led to where you're at now.
Well, I do have to preface this by saying one, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely.
Um, I have to start it all with my mother. My mom was actually the one that got me into wrestling when I was around 6 years old.
hmm
Uh, me and my it was me and my twin sister and my mother, all in Virginia, and wrestling was the one thing that kind of that was my singular thing. My first wrestling memory ever. It was when I had my PS2. It was a little skinny one. Had my PS2, and my mom took me to GameStop, and we didn't have money for like all the fancier games or all the newer games. However, GameStop always had this one big bin of just disc disc video games and little pack. Do you remember that?
hmm
Yeah. And the very first video game I've ever owned gotten was SmackDown. Here Comes the Pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, still to this day, like top tier, one of the best video games I've ever played in my entire life. My favorite of the SmackDown franchise.
Yeah.
But
And so, do you still play the video games? Do you still mess with wrestling games, or now that you're actually doing it, you don't mess with the game so much?
I want to so bad. I just haven't had a console in forever. It's been quite literally ever since I started wrestling. I haven't had a console. Just couldn't get my hands on one. I would love to. I'm going along with the updates, but yes, I would love to.
Yeah, no, and I was kind of in the same, it's kind of in the same boat. When I was younger, I played the crap out of video games, and as I got a little bit older, I got out of them. But now it's just like I see so much like Xbox versus PlayStation, and I was like, maybe that was a thing when I was growing up. I just don't remember it.
I'm team PlayStation.
There you
Always, always.
go. And so, growing up, having the video game, is that something that like clicked with you? Was that like this will be kind of cool?
Honestly, yeah, yeah. It will be really cool whenever I could create myself in video games because I don't know why, but also at that time I wasn't actually watching wrestling.
Okay.
I was just playing the video games, and video games actually tie very well into how I became a wrestler. And so yes, to answer your question, absolutely, absolutely, playing the video games, I guess, molded me from a very young age. I didn't even know it.
Oh, so it's kind of subliminally. It's like, playing the video games, and then as you progress and you play them a little more, you're like, damn, that'd be kind of cool to actually do this. I say
Yeah.
for a living, but at least as something to say that you did do.
Oh, 100%.
And which also leads up to you're a wrestler now. You put in the training and all that. And I always talk about the schools every chance I get. And as you know, me and Yaki talked a little bit about uh, training with AR Fox and everything. So tell us about how that's where you kind of picked to do your training and how you connected with the school.
Well, when I was a freshman in high school, I started looking at wrestling schools
hmm
because I was like, you know what? If I wasn't like dead set on wrestling, but I was like, you know what? It would be kind of cool if I did. And wwa4 was the first wrestling school that popped up to me. It's in Atlanta. It was like a 50, maybe an hour minute and like an hour
hmm
drive for me, so it wouldn't kill me. But I was only a freshman, so I kind of dropped it until I became a senior and I graduated.
hmm
And from that point, I just every day wrestling just didn't leave my mind, and actually becoming a wrestler didn't leave my mind. So I remember wwa4, and then I had looked it up, and the website had changed, and the location had changed, and like everything had switched over to our current location now.
Mhm.
And when around that, like a few years prior to that, Fox had just taken over the school.
Mhm.
And I looked at the school, and it showed that Fox was now the head trainer. And I was like, oh, that's incredible. I knew of Fox because honestly, I was watching like the compilations, the OMG
Mhm.
moments or whatever. And Fox is all up and through there. It's AR Fox, but
Yeah.
but I've never watched any match of his until I watched him in Lucha Underground
Mhm.
versus Killshot, and what a match that was. First AR Fox match I ever watched was on Lucha Underground, and he just blew my mind from there.
Mhm.
And then I went to one of the shows because on Thursdays they had like free shows, but this was the Halloween show. I went to one of the
Mhm.
shows, and I stayed back after just so I could meet Fox. Extremely chill. The polar opposite of what people think that would happen, but it
Mhm.
was just kind from the start. And then I asked like, "Yo, so could I like touch the ring or whatever?" Because just fanboy moment. He was like, "Yeah, do you want to get in?" I was like, "Yeah." And then said, "Can I run the ropes?" He was like, "Yeah, go ahead." He was like, "Can I run the ropes?" He was
Oh,
like, "Yeah, try."
wow.
And he let me. And then and then that's when I decided to choose the wwa4. Sorry,
I love that story,
random.
especially since like, you were kind of like on the fence, not about going there, but like, do I start training? Do I not start training? And then you met him, and then you connected with him for that minute or two. He let you get in the ring, and it was just that kind of that first impression, and then like seeing him in person and everything, and just connected everything together.
It was awesome. It was That was a moment that I'll never forget because that's genuinely what kickstarted me actually wrestling.
And that's what I think I mean, there's nothing wrong with obviously like with WWE, AEW being signed and all that. But that's one of my favorite things about the independents is you guys connecting with the people that help build you and help train you, and then keeping that connection, and then you can look back at later on and say, had things been different, but they weren't different.
Yeah. Man, that is definitely a beautiful part of the indies. I tend to take it for granted a lot because whether it be just like upwards to like 10 people in the crowd
Mhm.
versus a few of the biggest ones that I've done, like the biggest crowd to this day, yeah, the biggest crowd to this day was the crowd I did in Los Angeles. First time
Mhm.
ever out there. Just the the natural ovation
Yep.
from a true honest wrestling crowd. It's something that the independence has definitely love it.
How big was the crowd? About how many people was it?
Uh it was okay, so like it was two levels. All I remember seeing is the entire ground is full of people. There's like a space between the merch tables and the actual crowd, and then there's a crowd going back headed towards the door, and the lobby headed towards the door was open and big. No Way Jose was there,
Hmm.
and it was for PCW Ultra Old Fashioned Wrestling out in Los Angeles, and the top level was also full.
Wow.
So I can't even begin to really count that. It wasn't like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, but it was like it was a nice
Yeah,
substantial true wrestling crowd, and I loved it.
yeah, bigger than your, I guess, average indie crowd where you might get one with like 20, 30 people and like 40 people, and you're like, oh my God, the place is packed kind of thing. And I mean, that's awesome though that you got that experience because there's definitely people that have been in the industry for a little bit and they never have wrestled in more than in front of more than 30 or 40 people. So to have that experience and to have that kind of moment under your belt, I imagine that has a certain kind of feel to it.
Oh yeah, but oh that makes yeah, that definitely does because that happened a year and a half into me actually wrestling, and that's included with the training I did prior to like,
Mhm.
all that a year and a half of me wrestling, and to be able to like the weekend before that I wrestled at the four,
Mhm.
and then I wrestled another match on the weekend that had like 20 people in the audience, and then the following weekend to fly out, see that crowd, hear, and I was the
Yeah.
second match on to hear the chanting and the echoes bouncing off the walls because just making it louder. It was a moment that I never thought that I would get so early on, and
Yeah,
that I
especially kind of so early on in your career.
yeah, I thought that it would at least take like 5 years or until I got signed somewhere to even hear a crowd that loud because on the indies, unfortunately, the crowds can be scarce sometimes.
Yes, very true. And then, and that's the thing about indie crowds is, even if you do got a decent crowd, there's no guarantee that they're going to be interactive. They may be just kind of, brain dead, so to speak. And then, you got to kind of try to get them invested and kind of get them like, okay, why should I be invested in this match? So I can see how it could be like an uphill battle, even if it is a smaller crowd versus a bigger crowd.
Definitely a challenge because a bigger crowd, it's easier to work. A smaller crowd, especially like your prime example of what you just said, the fact that the crowd can be a substantial size, but you don't if they don't know you, you don't know them. It's not and if especially if it's like a regular ongoing show, you're just like this brand new person, you have to make them care, and sometimes you don't get a reaction, which can be disheartening. That's happened a few. I mean, I've experienced that a few times. I'm like, well, just keep going.
And I was about to say, I guess that's where I guess at some point, obviously I'm not a wrestler. I don't know that, at some point early on in the match, it kind of clicks where it's like this crowd, no matter what I give them, they're not coming, they're reacting. So I guess the show just kind of goes on, kind of thing, or do you actually adapt, what you're doing to try to get them involved?
Oh, I adapt to what I'm doing and try to get them involved because you still can't. They didn't come for no reason. It's like they drove. They didn't drive to some random area, to some random location, to a random building, and just sit down at a random place. They came to watch wrestling. So of course I'm gonna try my damnedest and my hardest to make them connect to me and make them connect to the match and actually want to watch us wrestle. That's why, like, normally everywhere I am the good guy
Hmm.
on the face.
Hmm.
So in order to do that, and in my case, and I'm still very early on in my wrestling
Hmm.
career, so I'm still very green. However, in my case, what I found what's been working for me is just if I truly authentically just be myself.
I
Because if I
I
try
hear
to
that so
be
much too. I hear that so much. It's like, what advice can you give me? Just be yourself.
that's it. I've gotten I've gotten more over being myself than I have any other time.
And the good thing about that is you don't really have to work towards the gimmick or work towards the character to build it.
Thank God, because that is Oh my goodness, that was my first thing when I first started wrestling, which I guess is all of us when we all first started wrestling. Like I want this character, I want to be this, I want to do that, I want this certain thing, I want to look like this, I want to be this out of obviously out of body character.
Hmm.
But once in my again in my own personal experience, once I actually started to wrestle, and once I started to see how my body physically moves differently than everybody else's in the ring, we can know exactly what to do in there. But physically, I move different. I'm more like flowy, and I'm pretty flexible. So when it comes to that aspect of everything, I have to be able to make sure that I can also get a crowd involved because that's
Hmm.
how I personally move. And then my reactions, my me as a person comes out naturally. So I'm amplified times 10 as they tell us to do.
I like that though. I like that, because I had posted on Twitter, I guess maybe like a week ago. It's like I think one of the uh, big things for independent shows is just reading the crowd, because there's crowds that you can go out there and you could just sneeze and they're gonna pop, and then there's you know crowds out there that if you hit a swanton off the Raptors while the guy's laying on four tables, they're still just going to sit there and be like, drooling kind of. And so, I mean, to me, and, just as a fan, I think that, speaks kind of volumes to where you're at as a wrestler, that you do take into the take into account the crowd and where they're at and what they're reacting to and what they're not reacting to. I think that's a very good trait or skill to have.
Thank you. And absolutely. Again, they came to watch wrestling. You got to give that to them.
Because I have been around some wrestlers that they think that just because they bust open that curtain and walk out, that that's all that matters, and
Those are going to
there's always
be,
one for sure. It seems like.
but
it.
some people are like that.
Yep. This I say this early in your career, have you figured out or found out that one thing that you don't? I don't want to say not like about wrestling, but maybe you could do without if you had the chance to do without.
Um, yes. This sounds like, and I don't want this. Oof, this sounds like the worst thing because obviously we signed up for this. We knew what we were getting ourselves into. However, bumping. I love taking bumps. The one thing I can take bumps all day and all that stuff. If I could do away with one thing in wrestling, it'll be a power bomb. I'll still take it. I'll still trust me, I will still take it. If the match calls for it, I'm gonna suck it up and take it. However, every
Yep.
single time I'm taking any sort of power bomb, then the wind knocks right out of me every
Oh,
single time. It's the worst beat to take.
yeah, and you can't.
Oof.
Yeah, and as soon as that wind leaves your body, that breath leaves your body, you can't just like hold up, give me a second.
Yeah, you can't pause. I'm not terribly hurt, but I'm like, wait, give me like a second.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's.
it
I
would
mean,
definitely be that. It'd be a
but yeah, I just seeing those on TV and seeing them in person or whatever. It's just like I've seen some where like the back of their head hits the mat first. I've seen some where like their tailbone hits the mat first, and I'm just like, man, it's just like if you don't do it almost 100% perfect, it just looks so bad.
I've taken I think I've taken like 7, and on one of them, he did the bomb, and I landed like on the top, like right, like the top of my back to the bottom of my neck, and then right there, and I like flipped over. And I was like, oof, that was a bad one.
Oh man, yeah. So even already not being a fan of them, and then taking one like that, I bet you're just like even more not a fan.
Definitely 100%.
And it's like when you're you know getting ready to go out, and your opponent hasn't called for a power bomb, you're just like, thank you.
That is the app 100%. I was like, you know what? If they, there are so many moves in wrestling.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, man, we don't have to use like the oldest move in the book, do we?
That sounds like such a cop out. I promise you, I'll take it. Just like brace.
Still make it look good.
Absolutely. You got to give and take.
It reminds me of when I was a kid. My mom used to ask me to like do the dishes or something. It's like, I'll do it, but I'm not going to be happy about
Yeah, basically.
it. And on the opposite end of that spectrum, have you found something about wrestling that you just absolutely love, and it's just like the one thing you always look forward to?
Being able to be somebody.
I love it.
Yeah, 100%. Because before wrestling, I felt like a nobody. Like I grew up kind of like the basic synopsis of like black boy in America growing up, no father in home, single mom, sister, and then having to not live in gray areas, living in
Yep.
hood areas, and then just kind of growing up. I got bullied a lot as a kid, and just most of my personal life, I've been through a lot of mental struggles as well. So, and then also on a different level, like coming to terms with who I am as a person.
Mhm.
Just wrestling was always kind of that escape for me. So every time I'm in Gorilla on any show, I'm extremely nervous because I'm always nervous before any match I do.
Mhm.
But my music hits, and I know I have to go out there, and I know I have to be somebody. And then for the minutes that I'm out there, I get to be somebody who I never could have imagined could exist within myself, let alone to actually have to perform it. So yeah,
That's like, I don't know, man. That's just like an amazing answer because it's true and it's authentic. And just by listening to you tell that story, I can tell that it's like wrestling helped you dig down and kind of find out who you really are, and then that you in that same breath you can also kind of shut those people up who bullied you and growing up, and just like you may have lived a certain type of stereotype, and then people may have you're not going to make it, you're not going to do things, you're not going to be this, you're not going to be that, and wrestling has just helped you shove that in everybody's face.
praise God every day, every day. I love
That's like,
wrestling.
I mean, that's just such like a great like heartfelt answer, and I mean, I don't know that I'll ever hear a better one if I ask that question
Oh,
again.
thank you.
And we'll close it out with: is there a wrestler today that you kind of like look up to, you kind of draw from, you mimic, or you kind of like, I guess, do you have a favorite wrestler? We'll put it that way.
Yes, I do. Um, my favorite wrestler is The Miz. I think that he is the greatest. I just for years as a kid hated him, despised him. Obviously now that I am now that I now that I'm like grown and like I understand the business, I understand wrestling. The Miz is my favorite wrestler, and just
And
to see his growth from when he on his like MTV days, which I had to go and look that up like a while like years ago. So I was like, no way he came from that and then he's this, and it's true.
Yeah.
But also, not only that, he watching The Miz inspired me to become better at promos because I in wrestling, you have to be able to cut a promo.
Yes.
I was
100% facts.
you have to, and it can't be basic. It can't be something that everybody's heard before. You have to pour yourself into a promo, and that's something that watching The Miz that's taught me. He's when he says every word that he says, he's genuine in everything that he says, and and my God, his smack, talking smack, that iconic, that right there, one of the greatest promos of all time. And also,
100% facts.
he watching The Miz as most of my life, not to be like all terribly sentimental again, but most of my life, I didn't have a voice.
Hmm.
But now growing up and becoming a wrestler and having to cut promos, and I can say everything that I've been feeling. I can feel everything that I've been wanting to say. And watching The Miz gave me that confidence to be able to use my voice. Now, even outside of the ring, I've become more confident. So thank you, Miz. I don't know if I ever see this. I hope I meet you. He is my dream match.
I got you. I'll send it to him in a DM, and we'll hope he sees it because
Oh,
yeah,
please.
because it's I talk a lot of junk about wrestling fans just because wrestling fans are wrestling fans, but I see like a lot of the stuff he's been doing on WWE lately, and like basically squash matches, and he's losing left and right, and it's like I think to myself, it's like, man, the Miz has been there so long, he's put in so much work, he's worked so hard, and he is really one of the top heels in wrestling. It's like I hate the fact that he's not getting a little bit more of the spotlight, but at the same time, it's just like even when he's losing, he's so good. When he's like just going off on the mic, he's still so good. So it's like, man, it's just like, how do you not like the Miz? You know what I'm saying?
How can you not appreciate The Miz? It's I genuinely I feel like he's like one of the unsung heroes of wrestling. 'Cause
Absolutely,
he's one of the greatest heels to ever do it. He's one of the greatest heels to ever step foot in that ring. To step foot
hundred
into
percent,
WWE, one of the greatest talents alone, like scratch, heel, face, all of that. One of the greatest to ever do it in my eyes. So
100% facts. He can work without a doubt.
absolutely, I've learned a lot from him. Just watching him wrestle, I learned how to give heat better.
That's awesome. Pun intended.
Literally. Nice.
I had to I had to slide that in there. I
Then
couldn't
just
help it.
one wrestling term, just one.
Oh man, Zamir, I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me this evening. And if you got any shows coming up, go ahead and tell the people where they can find those shows at.
Well, the main show that we always get ready to do is on Thursday nights at the wwa4. Every single Thursday at 8 p.m. streaming live on YouTube. It's
Awesome.
so much fun. The crowd there is incredible, and I don't know. I'm just wrestling now. Wherever wherever I post, just come there and say hi. I would love to meet all of you, and thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for having me. This is great. This is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I love talking wrestling, and I love giving guys and girls the chance to share their story and maybe tell a fact or two that other maybe nobody knew. And even if one person sees that and they follow you on social media or they show up to a show you're on, then that's one more than worth it there. And I just love giving you guys the platform to share your stories, good and bad.
Absolutely. Well, I agree with you, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. And your social medias have been scrolling across the bottom there. I've got your social media links in the description there. So no one really has a reason to not watch this and not follow you. So, and if they follow you, they can find out where you're going to be in 6, 8 months, a year from now, and then they can say, "Dang, I followed him before he got signed. I've been there since the beginning."
Yes, sir. Oh, I can't wait for that to happen.
I want it for you, man, for sure.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for this episode of Over the Top Rope. I appreciate everyone who joined in, who watched, and I appreciate the people who are going to watch it later on. That's going to do it. Everyone have a good night. We'll see you on the next episode of Over the Top Rope.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, my friend.